Guys, welcome to our spooky story time. I'm Miss Yelena, aka your ghoulish host for the evening, and we're going to be reading one of my favorite stories, The Goonies. And this is written by Brooke Vitale, or Vitale, I'm not sure. Mikey Walsh grew up in the Goondocks with his big brother Brand. It was where he met the Goonies, the best friends a kid could ever have. With the Goonies, a rainy day could be loads of fun, and hopping on a bike could begin an adventure. Mikey's friend Mouth had come over to spend the last weekend together before they all had to move. The Goondocks were the only home Mickey had ever known, but he was about to leave it forever. He was sad about leaving his friends. Mickey's house was going to be torn down along with all the other houses in the Goondocks. His friend Chunk, another Goonie, was about to lose his house too. Mikey pulled a cord, setting off a chain reaction that ended with the front gate swinging open so Chunk could enter. You want to come inside? You gotta do the truffle shuffle. Chunk was eager to tell his friends about a wild police chase he'd seen. He didn't know at the time that the police had been chasing a crime family known as the Fratellis. Suddenly, the boys heard a sound. Their friend Dada was ziplining from his roof to Mikey's house. Dada crashed through the screen door and landed in a heap on the floor. There he is, zooming in. All of the Goonies were together for the last time, but what could they do? Mouth had an idea. The attic was filled with things Mikey's dad had brought home. The attic was filled with things Mikey's dad had brought home from his museum. Maybe there was something cool up there the boys could keep to remember their Goondocks. In the attic, Mikey found an old picture frame. The dust on it was so thick he could hardly see what was inside. Mikey handed the frame to Chunk. Then he waited. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, crash! True to form, Chunk dropped the frame, shattering the glass. A map and a gold coin were inside. The gold coin was more than a coin. It was a doubloon. And the map was more than a map. It was a treasure map that once belonged to the pirate One-Eyed Willie. Come on in, we're only a couple pages in, guys. Just then, the men who were tearing down all the houses in the Goondocks stopped by to see Mikey's parents. Luckily, they weren't at home. Mikey knew something had to be done to stop the men. The treasure map could be his chance. The Goonies tied up Brand so he couldn't stop them, and they took off to find the treasure. If the Goonies could find One-Eyed Willie's rich stuff, they would have more than enough money to save their homes, and they could all stay together. Oh my gosh, I can't turn it off. So it's not in your way. You can see the pictures. Yeah, I'll switch around. You want to grab this seat?
No, I'll stay here.
Okay. Whoop. All right, we'll keep going then. So, they're going to find One-Eyed Willie's treasure, right? That's where we left off. The map led the Goonies to the beach. Mikey held up the doubloon he found. When Mikey saw the rocks and the lighthouse through the doubloon, he knew they were in the right spot. The map instructed them to walk 100 paces. That would put them right inside an old abandoned restaurant. Ooh, sounds spooky. While Mikey, Mouth, and Dada searched for a way in, Chunk went to look for soda, but found the car he'd seen the police chasing earlier instead. It was covered in bullet holes. Oh no. Chunk raced over to warn his friends, but he was too late. they'd gone into the restaurant. As the door slammed shut behind them, the boys found themselves face to face with Mama Fratelli, the evil criminal, and her cruel sons, Jake and Francis, were using the restaurant as a hideout. Bet that's who the police were chasing earlier, huh? Mikey knew One-Eyed Willie's treasure had to be close. He begged to use the bathroom, and Mama Fratelli reluctantly agreed. Mikey raced down the stairs. At the bottom, he heard a loud growl behind the door. Peeking inside, he saw a big scary man locked in chains. Terrified, Mikey ran away. There's the big scary man he found in the basement.
I see it too.
You see it now? Yep. Suddenly, a hand closed over his mouth. Brand was there to take the boys home. Brand's friends, Steph and Andy, joined them just as they were leaving, but Mikey wasn't willing to give up. It's our last chance to see if there's really any rich stuff. And then the Fratellis got into their car and drove away. The restaurant was empty. This really was their chance. Back in the basement, Mikey heard water running down a drain and found a hidden tunnel under the fireplace. There's the hidden tunnel. Meanwhile, Chunk found a freezer full of ice cream and something else. What is that? It's a stiff. Like a dead body. That's scary. At that moment, Fratellis came back. Panicked, the boys shoved the freezer door shut, accidentally leaving Chunk inside with the body. With no other way out, the group escaped into the tunnel. The Goonies followed the tunnel to a room full of pipes. Mouth realized that if they banged on the pipes hard enough, someone above ground might hear them. They banged and banged, screaming for help. Above them, water shot out everywhere, but no help came. Suddenly, the pipes burst, spraying water everywhere and forcing them to run. A short while later, the Goonies found a lantern and came face to face with a skeleton. It was Chester Copperpot, an explorer who had disappeared trying to find One-Eyed Willie's treasure. Hey, that skeleton kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
Chester Copperpot was a professional, and he didn't make it as far as they had. Mickey was now more certain than ever that they were on the right trail. Just then, Mikey saw something on the ground. He lifted it and found a long wire. It was a booby trap. Here's the trap. Slice. Crash. Mikey dropped the wire, but it was too late. Giant boulders crashed towards the ground, right where the Goonies were standing. Meanwhile, Chunk was able to escape from the Fratelli's basement. Once he was outside, he flagged down a car for help. But it was the Fratellis. They grabbed him and dragged him back to the restaurant. Mama Fratelli forced Chunk to admit that his friends went into the fireplace in search of buried treasure. When the Fratellis hauled Chunk to his feet, the doubloon fell from his pocket. Having gotten what she needed from Chunk, Mama Fratelli locked him up with her other son, the scary man Mikey had seen. Mama Fratelli doesn't seem like a very nice lady, huh? Chunk was terrified until he realized the man, whose name was Sloth, was gentle and kind. Plus, he loved chocolate, just like Chunk. Meanwhile, the Goonies found a waterfall filled with coins. But it wasn't One-Eyed Willie's treasure. It was the bottom of the town's wishing well. The boys eagerly gathered up the coins, but Steph stopped them. Those are somebody else's wishes. This one right here was my dream, my wish, and it didn't come true, so I'm taking it back. I'm taking them all back. Suddenly, the kids heard voices above them. There was a way out, but Mikey didn't want to leave. He wanted to find the treasure. The next time you see the sky, it will be over another town. The next time you take a test, it'll be in some other school. Our parents, they want the best stuff for us. But right now, they gotta do what's right for them. Down here, it's our time. The rest of the Goonies agreed. A riddle on the map led Mikey to believe that an artifact he had taken from Chester Copperpot might be their next clue. Clearing away some moss, he found a rock wall with stones sticking out of it. Mikey set the artifact over the stones and turned the rocks. Can you guys tell me, what do you guys see on the artifact? What's at the top there? Anybody tell what that is? Is that a skull maybe? That looks like it to me. Another booby trap. Suddenly, the floor fell away, taking Data with it. As he fell, Data tugged a cord on his jacket. A pair of chattering teeth shot out of his sleeve. Here he is, falling. Oh, the chattering teeth. Wow, is him falling? The teeth grabbed a hold of the rock above him. I've been saved by my pictures of power, he says. There he is, holding on to his little chattering teeth. They're holding him up pretty good. Back in the basement, Chunk and Sloth broke free. Chunk rushed to the phone to call the police. Sheriff, look, this time I'm telling the truth. Just like the last little prank with all the creatures that multiply when you throw them in the water, the sheriff says. But he had told so many crazy stories in the past, the sheriff didn't believe him. Sloth, get back here, Chunk shouted. Suddenly, Sloth took off towards the fireplace. Chunk followed him. Sloth and Chunk would have to save the Goonies themselves. Back underground, the Goonies were crossing an old log over a rushing river when they heard the voices behind them. It was the Fratellis. There they are, going across the river. It looks pretty dark and spooky down there. I don't think I'd be that brave. Dada had an idea. Slick shoes. Moving across the log, he sprayed oil from his shoes behind him. The moment the Fratellis stepped on the log, they slipped and fell. See, there he is, spraying oil out of his shoes. And there's the Fratelli brothers falling on the slippy goopy goop. A giant piano made of bones was at the other end of the log. On the back of the map was a set of music notes. They had to play the bones. With each correct note Andy hit, the bridge slowly lowered. But with each wrong note, parts of the ground fell away. Andy hit the last set of notes as the Fratellis closed in on them. The bridge came down and the Goonies raced across. Sliding down the watery tunnel, they landed in a large lagoon inside a cavern. They did it! They found One-Eyed Willie's pirate ship. That's a big ship.
That's it too.
Mikey told them to... Oh, whoops, I missed a page. The Goonies climbed aboard and discovered a room filled with gold and beautiful sparkling jewels. At the head of the table sat the skeleton of One-Eyed Willie. You know something, Willie? Mikey said. You're the first Goonie. OG Goonie. They had found the rich stuff. Now they could save their homes and stay in the Goondocks. One-Eyed Willie may have been the first Goonie, but Mikey and his friends wouldn't be the last. Mikey told them to load up anything that would fit in their pockets. Data reached for the gold in front of Willie, but Mikey stopped him. Except that. That's Willie's gold. They're gonna leave some for the pirate. He did all the hard work of finding it to begin with. The others nodded and began filling their pockets. Looking for extra room, Mikey dumped out his marbles and filled his marble bag with jewels. Meanwhile, nobody noticed that the Fratellis had come aboard. Without a second thought, they forced the kids to empty their pockets and walk the planks. The Goonies couldn't believe it. The Fratellis had won. There they are, making them walk the plank. Just then, Chunk and Sloth showed up to save them. Hey, you guys! But even with their help, the Goonies knew they could never win against the Fratellis. They jumped off the boat to escape. Brand, we can't go. We can't leave all that gold. That's our future, Mikey says. If we stay here, we got no future. We'll come back for it later, Brand says. So they jump off the edge into the water to get away from the Fratellis. After remembering how badly his family had treated him, Sloth tied up Jake and Francis and threw Mama Fratelli overboard. Then he went to join the Goonies. There was just one problem. A rock slide had covered the only way out. Sloth moved a huge rock out of the way so that the Goonies could slide out to safety. There's Sloth moving the rock for him. Back on the pirate ship, the Fratellis had gotten free. They lifted a pile of Willie's gold, releasing the last booby trap. The ship shook and began to move. The Fratellis had to get out of there too. When they emerged, they found the police were already waiting for them. Looks like they're not going to get away this time. On the beach, Mikey and Brand found their parents waiting for them too. The family hugged each other close. Suddenly, the two men showed up demanding that Mikey's dad sign the papers to turn over the house. Mikey couldn't believe it. He'd had the gold in his hands and he'd lost it. Or so he thought. They are seeing their family. Mr. Walsh was about to sign the papers when the Goonies began yelling. They had forgotten about Mikey's marble bag. Inside were enough jewels to pay for all of the Goonies' houses. There's all the jewels falling out. They got diamonds and rubies and sapphires. They didn't have to leave the Goondocks at all. One-Eyed Willie's last booby trap had set his ship free. It broke out of the cave, heading into the open water, and as the Goonies watched the ship sail away, happy to know that One-Eyed Willie was going home too. The end. And that's the end of our Goonies story. What do you guys think? Did you like it? Do you guys think you would be that brave? Would you go into a spooky, scary restaurant with booby traps to find buried treasure? Raise your hand if you'd go. Oh, you guys are brave.